never thought I'd be the kind of person telling a story like this. 3 months ago, if someone had told me they caught footage of a Sasquatch trying to break into their home, I would have laughed and asked to see the obviously fake video. Now, here I am, and I still can't fully believe what happened to me. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I captured on my security camera on the night of the 14th of October. I live alone in a cabin about 40 minutes outside Spokane, Washington, tucked deep in the woods, with my nearest neighbor nearly 2 miles away. This is the kind of place you go to get away from everything, exactly why I bought it 5 years ago after my divorce. The property sits on 12 acres of dense forest, mostly pine and fir, with a small creek running behind the cabin. I work remotely as a software developer, so the complete isolation suits me perfectly. Most days, the only sounds I hear are the birds, the occasional deer rustling through the underbrush, and the crunch of my own footsteps on the wooden floors. I installed a security system 2 years ago, not because I was worried about break-ins, but because I wanted to see what kind of wildlife wandered around at night. Living out here, you hear all sorts of noises in the dark, and I was curious to know exactly what was making them. The cameras are decent, not anything fancy, but clear enough to capture raccoons rifling through my trash or deer grazing in the small clearing behind the house. What I caught on the 14th of October was something entirely different. The first sign that something unusual was happening appeared 3 weeks before the main incident. One night, I was working late when I heard what sounded like someone walking outside. Heavy footsteps on the gravel, slow and deliberate. I thought maybe it was a neighbor checking on something, perhaps a broken down vehicle, so I got up to look out the window. The motion sensor lights turned on, illuminating the area around my truck and the front of the house, but no one was there. I stood at the window for about 5 minutes, listening, but the footsteps stopped. The forest was completely silent, no insects, no night birds, nothing. That kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, as if everything in the woods is holding its breath. I checked the security camera on my phone, but it didn't pick up anything unusual, just the lights turning on and then off a few minutes later. I figured it was probably a large animal wandering near the house, maybe an elk or a bear. We see both in this area, especially in late fall as they forage before winter. In the following weeks, the nighttime noises became more frequent. I heard footsteps on the gravel, snapping branches, and occasionally something brushing against the side of the house. The motion lights would flash on and off 2 or 3 times a night, but whenever I checked the cameras, nothing was there. What was strange was my dog's reaction. I have a German Shepherd named Rex, usually calm around wildlife. He's seen plenty of deer and raccoons without ever getting too worked up. But over the next 3 weeks, he started acting very strangely. He'd pace inside at night, whining softly, and stare out the windows. Sometimes he would stand by the front door and just watch it for hours, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Rex refused to go outside after dark, which was completely unlike him. Normally, he loves to wander the property in the evenings, but suddenly he wouldn't step onto the deck. Even during the day, he seemed on edge. When we went too far from the cabin, he would stick close to me, constantly glancing back at the tree line, ears up, alert. A smell began to appear around the same time. At first, it was faint, just a musky odor I occasionally noticed when stepping outside. I thought maybe something had died somewhere in the woods, a deer hit by a car wandering off to die, but the smell wasn't like any dead animal I'd ever encountered. It was earthy, stronger, and somehow alive, like the scent of a body, but wilder, more primal. I found the first footprints on the 10th of October, 4 days before the main event. I was checking the mailbox when I noticed it lying in a mud puddle by the path. At first glance, I thought it was a bear print, but the more I looked, something felt off. It was way too long and narrow for a bear, and the toes, well, they were all wrong. They look kind of like human toes, but much bigger and splayed out. The print was enormous, about 17 or 18 inches long and roughly 7 inches wide. I wear a size 11 boot, and this thing dwarfed my own footprint when I placed my boot next to it for comparison. The depth of the print suggested whatever made it was incredibly heavy, far heavier than any human. I snapped a few photos with my phone and spent the rest of the evening scouring the internet. The more I looked at alleged Bigfoot footprints, the more they resembled what I'd found. Proportions, toe placement, overall shape, all astonishingly consistent with hundreds of other reports from across the Pacific Northwest. But I wasn't ready to jump to any conclusions. This was real life, not some reality show about mysterious creatures. There had to be a logical explanation, maybe a deformed bear, or someone playing a prank. but I couldn't fathom why anyone would go to such lengths just to mess with me, especially when I barely know anyone in the area. Over the next few days, I found more footprints. They showed up seemingly at random across the property near the creek, at the edge of the tree line, and even right outside my bedroom window. The last one genuinely scared me. The ground there was soft from recent rain, and the print was perfect. You could see every detail, including what looked like ridges on the skin, similar to fingerprints. The pattern suggested whatever was making them was regularly moving around the house, staying just inside the bushes during the day, but becoming bolder at night. I started obsessively reviewing the security footage, fast-forwarding through hours of video, searching for any sign of movement. On the 13th of October, the night before the main event, I finally caught something on camera. Just after 2 a.m., motion sensor number 3, covering the side yard, picked up movement. I was already awake. Rex had been pacing and whining for over an hour, so I checked the live feed immediately. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just the familiar view of the side yard, the wood pile, and the shed where I keep the generator. But then I noticed a shadow that didn't belong. A massive dark figure was standing at the edge of the light, partially hidden behind a tree. It was far too large to be a person, and its shape didn't match a bear or an elk. I watched for about 10 minutes as it slowly moved from tree to tree, always staying at the edge of my view. It seemed to be studying the house, observing. The way it moved was unnerving, too cautious and intelligent for an animal, yet too large and agile for a human. Eventually, it disappeared back into the darkness, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I found new footprints leading from the base of a tree to within about 15 feet of the house. Whatever it was, it had gotten much closer than I'd expected. I also discovered my trash had been rummaged through, not overturned like a bear would do, but carefully opened. Lids were neatly set aside, and only certain items had been removed, mostly scraps of meat or anything with a strong smell. I took the day off and spent most of it fortifying the house. I checked every lock, made sure windows were secure, and even moved some furniture in front of the back door. I felt ridiculous doing it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was forming, something imminent. Rex was a bundle of nerves. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't go outside, not even to relieve himself, and kept pacing from room to room. Every few minutes, he'd stop and stare at a window or the door, hackles raised. I've never seen him act like this, not even during storms or fireworks. As night fell, I settled into the living room with my laptop so I could monitor all 4 security cameras at once. I charged my phone and had it ready, and I even grabbed an old baseball bat from the closet. I felt like I was preparing for war. It was insane, but I couldn't stop myself. The sun set around 6:30, and by 8 p.m. it was completely pitch black. The motion lights had gone out twice, once when a raccoon wandered across the driveway, and once for no apparent reason. Each time, Rex would jump and stare at the door, trembling. Around 10 p.m., I decided to go to bed. Rex followed me. I went into the bedroom and stood by the door, still awake and uneasy. I left my laptop on the nightstand so I could monitor the camera feeds, though I didn't really expect to get much sleep. I was just starting to doze off when Rex suddenly froze beside the bed. His ears perked up, and he let out a low, warning growl unlike anything I'd ever heard from him before. I was instantly wide awake, adrenaline surging. I grabbed my laptop and checked all 4 camera feeds, but everything looked normal. Then I heard a faint scratching sound coming from somewhere outside the house. It had a rhythm, a purpose, as if something was deliberately brushing along the exterior wall. Rex was trembling all over, still growling softly, but no longer barking, almost like he was afraid of making too much noise. The scratching moved along the side of the house, and I could track its progress by watching which motion lights turned on. First, the side yard light, then the backyard light, then the other side yard light. Whatever was out there was moving all around the house, close to the walls. I obsessively monitored the camera feeds, but the angles weren't quite right to catch what was triggering the sensors. All I could see were the lights flicking on and off in sequence as something moved through their detection zones. After about 15 minutes, everything went quiet again. The lights stopped flashing. Rex relaxed slightly, and I began to think maybe the night was over. I was wrong. At 11:47 p.m., I remember the exact time because I was staring at the clock on my laptop, camera 4, covering the backyard, detected movement. This time, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A massive dark figure was standing on the back patio right outside the sliding glass door that led to the bedroom. It had to be at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur or hair, with extremely broad shoulders and long arms. Its proportions were all wrong for a human. Massive torso, long limbs, tiny head compared to the body. The creature was inspecting the sliding door, running its hands along the frame, testing the handle. Its movements were deliberate and methodical, as if it was trying to figure out how the door worked. I could clearly see its hands in the yard light, huge, at least twice the size of a human hand, with thick, long fingers. What terrified me most was how intelligent it seemed. This wasn't some mindless animal acting on instinct. It was problem-solving, investigating, learning. It spent several minutes studying the door mechanism, occasionally pressing its face against the glass as if trying to look inside. I was frozen, staring at this unimaginable scene on my laptop screen, with Rex trembling at my side. The creature was less than 10 feet from where I lay on the bed, separated only by the sliding glass door and a few curtains. I could hear it moving outside, soft footsteps on the wooden deck, occasional scratches of claws or fingernails against the glass. After what felt like an eternity, the creature moved away from the door and out of camera view. I thought it might leave, but a few minutes later, it appeared on camera too, covering the front of the house. Now it was testing the front door, running its hands over the wood and metal, inspecting the lock mechanisms. This went on for over an hour. The creature carefully checked every possible point of entry, all the windows, both doors, even the basement hatch I had forgotten about. It was conducting a full reconnaissance of the house, searching for weaknesses. What was most unnerving was the silence. For something that size, it moved across the wooden floors and gravel driveway with almost no sound. If I hadn't been watching the cameras, I might never have known it was there. Around 1 a.m., it completely disappeared from view. I waited another hour, scanning for any movement, but everything remained still. Rex finally stopped trembling and lay down, though he stayed alert. I managed to get a few uneasy hours of sleep, waking repeatedly to check the camera feeds. The next morning, I immediately went outside to look for evidence. I found fresh footprints all around the house, confirming what I had seen on the cameras. The prints were even more distinct than before, pressed deep into the soft soil near the foundation. Even more alarming were the scratches I found on the sliding glass doors. Long parallel grooves on the metal frame could only have been made by claws or fingernails. The creature had been trying to figure out how to open or breach the doors. I spent the entire day reviewing the footage frame by frame, taking screenshots of the clearest images. The quality wasn't perfect, the motion lights cast harsh shadows, and the creature seemed instinctively to avoid the brightest areas, but I had no doubt about what I was seeing. This was not a bear, elk, or any known animal. Its posture was too upright, its movements too human-like, its behavior far too intelligent. But it wasn't human either. No person could be so massive, so strong, or move so effortlessly through dense forest in total darkness. I tried to come up with rational explanations. Maybe it was someone in an elaborate costume, though I couldn't imagine why anyone would go to such lengths to terrorize a hermit in the woods. Maybe some special effects hoax, but that seemed even less likely given how remote I am. Deep down, I knew what I was seeing. A Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it. A creature supposedly non-existent, yet unmistakably real, and clearly fixated on my house. Visits continued over the next 2 weeks, though less frequently. The creature would appear a few nights at a time, always following the same pattern, circling the house, inspecting doors and windows, sometimes spending hours just observing. I documented everything, capturing dozens of photos and hours of video. The creature seemed to grow bolder with each visit. It began showing up earlier, sometimes just after sunset while there was still natural light. It also started making more noise, probably realizing I wouldn't confront it. One night, I watched it rummage through my trash for over an hour, sorting the contents with astonishing care. It ate some items immediately, but seemed to save others, tucking them into what looked like a crude bag made of woven plant material. On another night, it took time inspecting my truck, running its hands over the metal surface and peering through the windows. It even tried the door handles, though luckily I always kept it locked. The most terrifying incident occurred on the 28th of October. I was watching the live feed when the creature approached the front door as usual, but this time, instead of just testing the lock, it began tapping. Not random banging or scratching, but deliberate, rhythmic taps. 3 slow taps, pause, 3 more, pause. It repeated this pattern for about 10 minutes, occasionally pressing its ear to the door as if listening for a response. I feared it might actually be trying to communicate, somehow aware I was inside and wanting me to acknowledge its presence. Rex went berserk, alternating between growling and whining, clearly as disturbed by the knocking as I was. After that night, I decided to seek help. I couldn't continue living like this, effectively trapped in my own home by a creature most people believed didn't exist. I began researching Bigfoot investigators and cryptozoologists, looking for someone who might take my evidence seriously. Most of the people I contacted wanted money up front or seemed more interested in publicity than actual investigation. A few responded politely, thanking me for the interesting story but declining to get involved. Finally, I found a team of researchers from the University of Washington conducting a legitimate study on unexplained wildlife encounters in the Pacific Northwest. They agreed to review my footage and visit the property if they deemed the evidence credible. I sent them the clearest photos and video clips, along with detailed measurements of the footprints and a comprehensive timeline of events. Their reaction was cautiously optimistic. They couldn't identify the creature with certainty, but they agreed the evidence warranted further investigation. They visited my property on the 2nd of November, 3 weeks after the initial major encounter. The team included 3 graduate students and their professor, all equipped with professional cameras and measurement tools. They spent the day documenting footprints, collecting plaster casts, and setting up additional surveillance cameras in the surrounding forest. Their analysis confirmed what I already suspected. The footprints were genuine, not carved or fabricated, but made by a large bipedal creature with a foot structure unlike any known animal. The depth and the spacing of the footprints suggested something weighing at least 600 to 800 pounds, moving with a stride no human could manage. More importantly, they confirmed the video footage. While they couldn't definitively identify the species, they ruled out all ordinary explanations. This was not a person in a costume, a misidentified animal, or some kind of hoax. The professor, who had studied similar encounters for over 20 years, told me my evidence was among the most compelling he had ever seen. The extended observation period, multiple camera angles, and consistent behavioral patterns painted a picture of a truly mysterious encounter. They left some motion-triggered cameras around my house in hopes of capturing additional footage. They also gave me a 24-hour contact number and instructions for documenting any future encounters. The creature returned once more on the 7th of November. This visit was different from all the others. Instead of wandering around the house, it went straight to the front door and stood there for nearly an hour, clearly visible under the porch light. It seemed to be inspecting the additional cameras the research team had installed, occasionally reaching out to touch an object before retracting its hand. Its behavior displayed a truly unsettling level of intelligence. It understood it was being observed and recorded, and it was curious about the technology being used to watch it. Near the end of the visit, the creature did something that still makes me shiver. It stared directly into camera 1, mounted above the front door, maintaining eye contact for several long minutes. This wasn't the vacant stare of an animal, it was a focused, intelligent gaze from something that clearly understood what it was looking at. Then it turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. I have not seen it since. The research team was thrilled with the new footage. They have been analyzing it over the past 2 months, using advanced software to study the creature's biomechanics and behavioral patterns. They also shared the evidence with colleagues at other universities, and there is talk of publishing a paper in a peer-reviewed journal. As for me, I still live in the same cabin, although I've upgraded my security system and always keep a handgun within reach. Rex has gradually returned to his normal behavior, though he remains uneasy whenever we venture too far from the house after dark. I've become a reluctant expert on Bigfoot encounters, answering calls and emails from researchers and enthusiasts around the world. Most of those who reach out are genuinely curious, seeking validation for their own experiences, but I've also heard from countless skeptics demanding more proof. I understand that skepticism. 6 months ago, I would have been just as doubtful if someone told me this story. But I've seen what I've seen, and I have the footage to prove it. There are things living in the forest that science has yet to categorize, and sometimes they're curious about their human neighbors. I still don't know why this creature was so interested in my house. Perhaps it was simply the closest human dwelling to its territory, or maybe something about this location caught its attention. The research team has a few hypotheses, but no definitive answers. What I do know is that this experience has changed the way I think about the world around me. We like to believe we've explored and documented everything, that no mysteries remain. But there are still vast stretches of wilderness where humans rarely venture, places where creatures could live and evolve beyond our knowledge. The Pacific Northwest contains thousands of square miles of dense forest, much of it accessible only by foot and only during certain seasons. If you want to avoid human contact, these forests are perfect. Deep valleys receive only a few hours of sunlight each day, with caves and rock formations that don't appear on any map. Entire ecosystems existing in isolation. Perhaps this is where they come from. Sasquatches, Bigfoots, whatever you want to call them, a remnant population of some ancient primates that learned to avoid humans and survive in the deepest wilderness. They will, explaining their intelligence, human-like behavior, and apparent understanding of technology and tools, or maybe they are something entirely different, a species we've never encountered, evolving along a completely separate branch of the evolutionary tree. The possibilities are endless. And honestly, all of them are equally terrifying and fascinating. What happened to me was not a fleeting moment, a glimpse, or a chance blurry photo. It was weeks of continuous interaction with something that, according to mainstream science, shouldn't exist. I watched this creature study my house, test its defenses, and ultimately decide that I wasn't worth pursuing. The footage speaks for itself, but I know that even clear video evidence won't convince everyone. There will always be those who insist it's a hoax, offering increasingly elaborate explanations for why the evidence couldn't possibly be real. That's fine. I understand this challenges many fundamental assumptions about the world we live in. But for those willing to entertain the possibility that unknown creatures still roam the wilderness, my footage provides some of the best documentation ever recorded. It's not perfect. Lighting conditions and camera angles weren't ideal for scientific analysis, but it's extensive and consistent. The creature I encountered was intelligent, powerful, and surprisingly cautious. It spent weeks studying my house before making any aggressive moves. And when it finally decided that I wasn't a threat worth pursuing, it simply disappeared back into the forest. The level of strategic thinking and self-control displayed points to a far more sophisticated species than most people imagine. I've shared my story with dozens of others who claim to have had similar encounters, and the consistency is remarkable. Descriptions of size and shape, reports of behavior, everything aligns in a way that is hard to dismiss. Intelligent behavior and cautious observation, along with a consistent pattern of approach and retreat. These aren't random encounters with ordinary wildlife or misidentified animals. Their interactions reflect a species that has learned to coexist with humans while maintaining secrecy. A species that understands our technology well enough to avoid most detection, yet is occasionally curious enough to take risks. My encounter lasted for weeks and provides unprecedented documentation of Bigfoot behavior. The creature I observed was methodical, intelligent, and surprisingly restrained. It had numerous opportunities to break into my home or confront me directly, yet it chose instead to observe and learn. That restraint may be what has allowed its kind to survive for so long without any confirmed proof of its existence. They are smart enough to avoid prolonged contact, disciplined enough to retreat when detection is likely, and organized enough to maintain secrecy across generations. The footage I captured offers only a glimpse into their world, but it is enough to confirm that they exist, that they are intelligent, and that they live among us in wilderness areas we think we know well. I'm not asking anyone to take my word for it. The evidence speaks for itself, and there are researchers far more qualified than I am analyzing every frame. What I can tell you is that my life has been permanently changed by what I witnessed, and I will never look at the forest the same way again. There are things out there that we do not understand. Creatures that have learned to avoid detection while living right under our noses. My security cameras captured evidence of that reality, and I share it with the world because people deserve to know the truth about what inhabits our wilderness. The creature that visited my home during those weeks in October was real, intelligent, and ultimately harmless. It could have easily broken in, confronted me directly, or chosen violence instead of curiosity. Instead, it chose to observe and learn, and once its curiosity was satisfied, it simply vanished. That is the reality of a Bigfoot encounter, not the violent monster from horror movies, but a smart species that has learned to coexist with human presence while maintaining independence. They are out there, they are watching us, and sometimes they are curious enough to take a closer look at how we live. My cameras captured that curious behavior, and the footage remains some of the most compelling evidence ever recorded of these elusive creatures. Whether you believe it or not is up to you, but the evidence is there for anyone willing to consider it objectively with an open mind. Truth is stranger than fiction, and sometimes it shows up on your back porch in the middle of the night just to see who you are. For more fascinating stories, check them out here.